Okay, so 2.7, just going to pull down the facial CT scans and it's preparing the file. So just giving my initial feedback, massive improvements made to this version, but still some small edits, which a lot of small edits I think will make a massive difference to how the software is interpreted. So the very first thing, bringing this up, is when we go to the presets here, one is the actual location of the nav cube here. So the navigation cube really needs to be next to the camera up here rather than sitting below it. Additionally, when you click on this upper corner, it inverts the camera, whereas what you really should have is the ability to go up to here. Again, when you click this, it inverts the camera, whereas it should be showing effectively this view here. So as we move around, it also seems to be rather buggy. If you try and click on the front view, it doesn't work from the sides. But if I click on right and then front, it works. So anything off kilter when you're still on the front view doesn't actually recenter the scan. Up here, you still need to be able to hover over the top of these and actually get preset labels that appear saying skin, muscle and bone. Reset tools are fine. And the Hounsfield value seems to be appearing in the bottom right all the time. And as you move around or make different interactions, it keeps spawning more and more of these Hounsfield boxes, almost on a timer. Again, we can actually turn the Hounsfield display off in the segment tool, but when we go to settings, the Hounsfield pointer still says coming soon. Furthermore, with the Hounsfield display, if we go segment, Hounsfield display, it should not appear in the bottom right. It should be appearing right next to the cursor. I don't want to be looking at the Hounsfield value of a tooth up here and constantly having to refer to the bottom right. But that's a pretty simple UI change. So the Hounsfield pointer needs to be corrected in the general settings and also in the segment tool, changed in terms of how the UI shows. If I go through in the edit tool, I actually really like how these buttons are centered and look like they're the full width of the side panel, whereas in measure, they're not the full width of the side panel, and they're also left aligned. So consistency between the two panels is kind of key. But these, work quite nicely. Additionally, I think while you have a polygon open, it might be better to actually display the information kind of in the top right rather than the bottom right. Again, trying to keep the information as central as possible, or put it in a side panel here and just hide everything else in the side panel that's not active at that point in time. The capture tool, the cameras now seem to be working. There's a fair delay from when you click the camera up there to when it actually takes the image. And there's a little bit of like weird blur around the left hand side of the screenshots. Turning that around. And then with the upload STL, so the entire model management on the inside of 3Dicom from November last year, the concept was to have the import object and then a hierarchy of objects in the left-hand panel here, similar to VSP, where you'd be able to hide particular STL objects, share individual objects, and parent them or merge them. So the fact that it's kind of spread across connect, segment, and extend now I think is getting a bit confusing. So you should be able to actually import STL files, view them in the center panel here before you can then upload them to MFTP. And again, where it says upload model, it's got a wrong tooltip associated with it. So in segment here, the scan visibility, I can see it making changes in the 3D view here. So you can see that it changes the opacity, but it doesn't really seem to do anything else. I'd also think that clicking that there would actually toggle the base volume on and off, but it doesn't seem to make any change. Clicking on here, it's pretty obvious that you can double click. However, I think you need to be able to have a pencil icon next to the name so that you click there to actually edit it. And the tools as well, not the greatest icons ever. What's really annoying actually in the thresholding or like the segmentation panel at the moment is the fact that the brush size doesn't go lower than 10, and yet it's absolutely massive on this image. Obviously you can zoom right in like this, but even if we zoom right in on one of the teeth, or like on the ramus here, as I click to create a segment, the brush gets really large, and for some reason it's now not painting. So there's some issues here with scale as you move across, and I'll just clear all and create a new segment. Hopefully that fixes it. So we'll call that S2, and we can go through and the arrays works. For all accounts, the functionality actually does it does function, but there's major issues in terms of not being able to get the kind of granularity that's required to individually segment between different teeth without zooming right in. And then even when you zoom right in, the sphere seems to be larger than what's actually being shown here. Additionally, the flood fill, it just seems to fill everything on the page, with the exception of what's being shown in the or what the paint threshold is. And there's no Control Z, like I'm using Command Z on my Mac, and it won't actually undo. So there's no undo or redo buttons in the segmentation panel. So the brush radius needs to go right down in terms of size, showing the 3D segment. So when you make the edits on here, also it's really making my computer hot at the moment, but it's not too laggy. If we go through and make these drawings here, it's not showing up in the 2D views. So you can see how laggy these side views are, but it's not showing the segmentation in the 2D views, the other 2D views. Furthermore, if I say show 3D segment and go back to the 3D view, and then change either the Hounsfield threshold, there's no 3D view being shown. And furthermore, if you change the scan visibility, go back and forth like that with the opacity, it doesn't change that. So there's some issues there with the segmentation. Furthermore, I mean, it would be nice to effectively have the ability to do Hounsfield thresholding throughout the entire scan, so that you're not having to, for bony structures like this, you're not having to go through individual slices to paint every single slice one at a time, and you can run that kind of overall Hounsfield thresholding to the base volume, and then go through and erase things that you don't need, rather than trying to draw on all of the things that you do need. So that's the kind of initial feedback with the tool. When I actually export to STL, this is very confusing. Like I assume that this is the actual, not the file name, but the file location. So it's very confusing about what this actually is. But when you browse, I can browse and choose the desktop, and then it shows it. So nobody's actually going to type in the file path into that, so it's very confusing. And when you export, you'll see that the load wheel 1 doesn't actually move, and 2 is not over the top of where it was before. So I believe it's exporting now. Yeah. And it does actually export, and you can see the STL files. So it is working functionally, but there's other kind of components that need to be fixed. And then from an orientation point of view, I believe, according to Jason, that the scan should actually be oriented this way, with the spine, the posterior to the left and anterior to the right. But all of that orientation can be checked. Thanks.